Ladies and gentlemen, so pleased to be back up here, and this time with one of Israel's most prominent personalities. Amos Gitaï, filmmaker, artist, writer, thinker, and all-around polymath, I think we can say, safely. This is a conference on art and culture. So initially I thought, and if you could please keep your voices down, because we really need to hear Amos. Initially, I thought, this is a conference about art and culture, and I need to keep politics out of it. But then, he's a man from Israel, and I'm a woman from Iran. I don't know if you've heard of the Woman Life Freedom Movement, but that's basically what it boils down to. So it's going to be hard for him and me not to touch on politics. So Amos has had a few words of biography, a life of privilege on the one hand, and I would say a life of trauma on the other, as is the way with humankind. He was born into an intellectual family. His father was an architect who studied at the Bauhaus with people like Mies van der Rohe and Kandinsky, and who died when Amos was a soldier in the regular Israeli army. Amos himself became an architect, and he got his PhD from Berkeley. Then he went back to Jerusalem. During the 1973 Yom Kippur War, he was called up as a reservist in a helicopter rescue crew, and the helicopter was hit by a missile. He himself was wounded quite severely, and the pilot of the helicopter was decapitated. So it's a wonder that we have Amos here with us tonight on this podium. And since we do, I wanted to say, Amos, that's trauma on a pretty exceptional level. That is off the charts trauma. So my first question, I'm sorry to ask a kind of a little bit of a tough one to start with, but I wanted to ask you how you think your life, your trajectory, your career as a great, great filmmaker have been affected by this extraordinary trauma. And clearly, I think it made you a different person, but I'd like to hear you say it. And if we could please keep the talking to a minimum, please.
So, Farah, first I'm delighted to speak to you. You know, I think that the arts are a way to cross borders, the stupidity of fences dividing people. And if the artists will not do it, who will do it? If we wait for the politicians, we'll wait a long time. So we have to speak our truth. I consider my work essentially as a civic gesture. I liked a lot what Dana Dajani said before. Dana, thank you. And we have to keep memory. So you want me to work like on my own psychotherapy sofa, but I will do it. So I was, as you mentioned, I was a son to an architect and intellectual woman. My mother was born in Palestine in 1909, so it's still the Ottoman Empire. And I think that the wedding of my parents was in Baalbek in Lebanon. So already in my childhood, on the little table, there were two little simple train tickets which said very simply, Haifa, Beirut. So as a child, I asked her, but how come you put Lebanon is an enemy country? She said it was possible, and one day it will be possible. And I think this sense of optimism, of not prejudging the future by the present condition, is central. The war, you know, my job in the Yom Kippur was to collect people who have been burning in tanks and killed, show what a kind of a waste is the war and the brutal conflicts of the Middle East, you know. Death, wounded, decapitated, throwing away all the resources of this beautiful, important region instead of building something viable. So I think that it probably did not change me so radically, but it underlined. As we have friends from Berkeley, right? So it's really nice to reconnect thanks to this beautiful conference. So I think that coming back after it, and I was still studying architecture. I kept studying architecture, did my PhD in Berkeley, like you mentioned. But after I collected all the proper academic stamps, I said, now I'll do something different. I will speak about the destiny of this region. I did a very big project, which will be in the coming Biennale, about the Dajani family. Dana,
yes,
you should come.
I'm going to be asking you about that next. But before we go to that, I thought, Amos, if you could kind of explain to me why you decided to take the road of film, because you could have been a writer. I mean, that's what I do. You could have written books. You could have, you know what I mean? 100 ways you could have gone.
I mean, I consider, and I want to insult colleague architects, that it's a bit of formal exercise, and that I want to touch an exposed nerve of my dear countrymen. Sometimes it didn't bring me only friends, but I thought it's necessary. We have to keep, you know, I don't consider memory sentimental or nostalgic. I think it's a way to keep a trace. Now we have a very problematic powers in Israel, and I think that it's very important to keep a trace that something else is possible.
Yeah, and you do that more effectively with film, isn't it? It's a very immediate thing.
I do it with anything I can. I did theater, I do film. I'm going to do something at the next Biennale. Yeah. So at this stage of my life, I feel free to do what I feel like doing.
Yeah, a little parenthesis before we move on to this project called House, which is so important. I wanted to ask you what you thought of this whole streaming thing, because, you know, yeah.
I think it's technology. You know, the important thing is to do good works. And as I said, I think that, and we are in a session about art, is to do things which have civic dimension, not demagogic, not instrumental. Let's not forget a painting called Guernica, that you may have heard about it, right? No, you heard about the Guernica? So I consider that Picasso did it in 1937 when he saw the bombardment of the Luftwaffe on this village. His medium is painting, so he did a painting. And perhaps it's the most well-known, I mean, obviously he did the low works. So it is a civic gesture. And I think in the basis of the arts and the role of the artist, you know, in African terms, I would say we are supposed to be a kind of shaman to heal the wounds of the suffering, of the destruction. And I think that that's a very, and we should choose the medium which is the most effective. Cinema is effective, so.
So that's a new definition to the question of this conference, what are the arts for? The arts are for shamanism. Lots of shamans here today, I guess. So Amos, let's move on to this absolutely seminal work that you did called House. And this is a film that was actually taken in several stages. It's about a house in West Jerusalem that was owned until 1948, which is the partition, the creation of the State of Israel, by a Palestinian gynecologist. Then there was a terrible massacre called the Deir Yassin massacre, and this gynecologist left this house. And I think his name was Dajani. So I think Dana Dajani, who we saw earlier, might be related to this.
Sure. It's a big tribe, the Dajanis, yes, as you know.
Yes, so everything connects. Then the government of Israel settled Algerian Jews in this house. And 40 years ago, I believe, a well-known Israeli economist moved the Algerian Jewish family to a mass public housing project and then turned it into a villa. So this house in itself is sort of like a microcosm of what's happening in Israel and between Israel and the Palestinians. It's sort of like a metaphor, isn't it? It's a microcosmos, as you call it.
I think I agree, you know, in your conversation prior to this one with Andreas, I liked that he said that we need a project, right? So I think that the fact that we speak about a restrained territory, we don't speak about the entire Middle East, the entire Israeli-Palestinian relation, but we take one house, and we just take the story of this house. And on this house, on this stage, one can say, all the protagonists, the Mahmoud Dajani came as well, and the Palestinian workers, and the new owners, and each one tells a piece of the biography, and the juxtaposition of these different fragments tell us something concrete about this house, but kind of a metaphor of Jerusalem. A bit like, since I love Joyce, it's a bit like the way he was dealing with Dublin and so on. So this film I did in 3 times. I did it 43 years ago. It's considered to be my first film. And then 18 years later, I came again. And then 25 years later, the Dajani family suggested I go to visit a relative in Amman. And I went to see the family. So it's a triptych, yeah.
Yeah, if you go on YouTube and you look up House, I think there's a version that was on Rai 3. If you speak Italian or can read Italian subtitles, you can watch it there. Otherwise, you can contact Amos's assistant and get the Vimeo code to watch it. That's how
Absolutely, you're welcome.
It's a beautiful film, but I mean, I'm also kind of intrigued that, let's think about it here for a moment. You are an architect by training, right? Your father was an architect, and your first movie is called House, and it's about a house. You don't think there's a connection there?
There may be. You may be right.
Yeah, I'm trying to be the psychotherapist here.
Good.
Yeah. So Amos, this house is something that's been obviously a movie, but you're also creating plays out of it, installations, all kinds of things. Can you talk about it, because you're taking it to the Venice Architecture Biennale?
I mean, we did just now, we finished a play which was in Paris, and we'll go to the Barbican in London. It's also called House. And it's ending with a beautiful poem of the great Palestinian poet Darwish, Mahmoud Darwish, which is called Think of the Other. And on stage, it was a very moving experience of having Israeli actors, Palestinian actors, Iranian fantastic santur player, a Russian immigrant to play violin. So all these people that supposedly are fighting each other in the Middle East were there to create together. And as you know, creating is much more complicated than negotiating politically. You have it's a sensitivity, it's a rhythm. The Middle East have different rhythm than the Speedy Gonzalez editing. So it was really an incredible discovery for all of them. They are kind of in love. They cannot stop writing to each other, even now it's over the Paris presentation. And so Leslie Loco, who is the chief curator of the coming Venice and a very significant thinker from Ghana, she suggested that I participate, and we're doing something at the coming Biennale.
You know, when I hear you talk, it reminds me of the East Western Divan Orchestra, created famously by Daniel Barenboim, who's a maestro I absolutely worship, and being a musician myself, and Edward Said, the late Edward Said. And this, do you know about this East West Orchestra?
Sure. You know, I did a big film on the assassination of Rabin. Yeah. And Barenbaum was kind enough to record some, and we went to Berlin to record with him. I think that all these gestures, which are on one hand good art, so they're not just propagandistic art, they're really profound, good art, and at the same time they're profound dialogue, they're important, they're really necessary.
We have about 15, 16 minutes left. I'm going to carry on talking here, but I realize it's an incredible privilege to be able to ask questions of Amos. So I would like to share the privilege with you. If you have any questions, please do raise your hand, and I will happily request a microphone for you. Yes, we'll have a question here, and then I'll chat with them again. Please, could we have a... Thank you.
Hi,
Can you please introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Gemma Israelson, and I'm the head curator at Shifting Vision. Shalom Ya'aretz. I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about your thoughts on the recent protests in Israel and what it says to you about a larger unifying spirit of Israelis who are more factioned in different ways that the outside world doesn't see than you could ever imagine. But I think what we've seen in the recent weeks is kind of an ongoing, large-scale unification of people from many different religious and socioeconomic backgrounds. And I'd just love to hear your thoughts on it as an Israeli.
That was going to be my next question.
Sorry.
I am very proud of it. I'm very proud that it's a kind of a wake-up call of complete sectors of the Israeli society who are preoccupied. Where shall we have dinner? To which island shall we spend the summer? And so on. And now they're waking up, they're marching in Tel Aviv. They do not want it to become a dictatorship. They understand the power of the dangerous fusion between Orthodox religion, which is excluding everybody else, ethnocentric, and right-wing, but extreme right-wing thinking against anyone else who is not Israeli Jewish. So I'm proud of this sector of the Israeli side, and it is a necessary stage. I hope, I'm not religious, so I'm not sure I want to say I pray, but let's say I will pray for their success. It is important that they will stop this nonsensical, racist government to win. So, kol hakavod, all the best, When I'm there, I'm going there. And also, good. Also, I showed some friends, there was also a very moving other event. A couple of days ago, it was the Israeli Day of Independence. And I was among the people who went to a joint Israeli-Palestinian Memorial Day for the dead, which are on both sides. So let's accept other narratives, not just us. Otherwise, we will be stuck for another hundreds of years. So I think all of that are important events for the contemporary history of Israel.
Speaking of going on for another hundreds of years, once we get over Netanyahu, do you think that there will be...
Are you sure we'll get over?
Well, I don't know.
This guy, even if he's dead, I would go and check if he's really dead,
Yeah, he kind of came back from the dead. Because I heard you talk about him, a year or two ago when there was a coalition government that was not at all of that stripe. And you were saying Netanyahu's gone, but he might be back.
Yeah.
And he is back.
No, it's actually, since we're in a culture session, it's actually, I want to disappoint you. Culture is not immuning. It's not immuning. Netanyahu is more...
Immunizing, you mean, yeah.
Yeah, Netanyahu is more cultivated than his rivals, the other guys of the opposition. He read history. I'm sure he swallowed Machiavelli. So... the guy is problematic because he's not stupid. He's more smart than his friends, Bolsonaro, Trump, and so on. And that's why he's even more dangerous, because he's a manipulator on a good scale. And we have to be very prudent dealing with him and not accepting any intermediary solutions some people are proposing. We should go until all these racist laws are out. There is no intermediary solution. It's like you cannot choose between the good and the evil. You have to make a choice. And we have to make the choice. And it's not true that we will lose, It's not true.
You think a majority of Israelis will choose good over what you describe as evil?
It's technical. He has a technical majority in the parliament, not a big one. The opposition lost by 3,000 votes, but they fought each other disproportional egos, political stuff, and they lost, and he controls the parliament, and so since I worked a lot on not just the killing of Rabin, but the incitation to kill Rabin, and I saw because I got the videos of all the campaign that was done at the time. So I'm saying that this guy, we have to be prudent. And also on the cultural sphere, it's bringing a very revisionist visions of what is the contemporary history of Israel. We have to fight for keeping the memory. And the memory is not innocent. You know, I don't believe that the planet only moved by machine guns and money. The planet also moved by ideas. So let's not be shy, speak about ideas, you know.
Great, let's speak about ideas and move away from politics. The idea behind this conference is, of course, that art can be a way forward. And through the traumas we've been through, whether political or disease or whatever. And what do you think of really the power of art? I mean, I would like you not to give, and I'm sure you won't give, a woolly answer. I would like maybe specific examples of maybe works that you did, like House, like the Rabin movie, which is extraordinary, that they had an impact, you know.
So I want to disappoint you a bit. I don't think the art changed the reality. I do not think. And even between you and me, I do not like films like Michael Moore when he manipulated too much, because then when I see a manipulative work, I start to be suspicious, you know. And then I even suspect ideas. I agree with him politically, but I disagree with him artistically. When you show a good cause, why do you need to manipulate so much? Why do you need to show Bush like that and a bomb like that, you know? I don't need it, you know. But the arts, I don't think they change immediately, but they keep a trace of the memory, and this is not nothing, you know. If I go for a second to the Guernica, so Picasso didn't win, you know. Franco stayed in power. The fascists are still. There is a resonance even today that it's a democracy, but. You ask yourself, I think several years ago, there was a social democrat elected the prime minister of Spain. And what did he put at the top of his priority? Do you remember?
The graves of the fascists?
Yeah, he wanted to take out the bones of Franco from this kitsch mausoleum. And you ask, why? Why is it priority? It's only because of memory. If artists, militants, or poets, writers did not do their job, it will not happen. So I think we have to keep these traces, and the traces would make the work.
Do we have another question from the room? Yes, we have a lady in the back. Yes, please.
Yes. If you say that art have to keep trace of memories, I think archaeological museum also has this role of keeps traces of our history, memories, and they become a kind of guide for the future.
You are, yeah, can you introduce yourself again? You are Elisabeth de Porzampar, the architect, are you not?
And so this morning I was speaking about my musical archaeological museum, and I would like to say, speak about word in Hebrew word, kadima, because kadima contains it means the future, but it contains the root kedem, the past, and I think. In the even way that in my museum, archaeological museum, I'm building the future with this memory of the past, of the trace of the past, I think in your work, when you are speaking about keep the traces of memories of the past, you are also building the future. Because people can take lessons about your work also, about this past.
And I think that the oeuvre of Amos is an illustration of that, because everything in there is about not memorializing, but preserving the memory of. Amos, to go back to the issue of how useful art can be, because we're all here trying to answer that question. I'd like to go back to that with you. You spoke about Guernica, and you rightly said, well, Guernica, when he made it, it didn't actually stop the Civil War. So can you talk a little bit about art that's being made today, contemporary art, any kind of art form, not just your own, but others, that you think might be having some kind of impact on, you know, how we feel about the world, or?
I mean, I'm not so knowledgeable as you think, you know, so... And I always say that I like to cultivate my ignorance, you know, because I'm a curious person, so I like to discover something that I do not know. Also, I work with great actresses, Juliette Binoche, Natalie Portman, Jeanne Moreau, the greatest Jeanne Moreau. And each time I work with somebody, I like to discover the personality. Also, Yam Abbas, the Palestinian, Yael Abekassis, the Israeli, you know, great artist. So I cannot give you a summary of it. I think that probably there are a lot of gallerists and know better than me. I have myself a gallerist, which is a good one, Tadeusz Ropak. But I think that the art world was taken too much by commercial aspects, and they have to go back to the essence. So I was very happy that Ropak got the work of Beuys, you know, Joseph Beuys, who tried in some sort of very crude way to deal with the German history, you know. I mean, I did some work with Pina Bausch. I think she was incredible inspiration to what I do, because she tried to create a bridge beyond this terrible period of the Third Reich. I think that Fassbinder, among the directors, tried the same. I think there are the three big figures. I spoke to Andreas before, and I told him that my father, because he loved this language, you know, the rapture for German Jews, the brutal rapture was terrible. And
Your father was a German Jew, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was an Ostjuden, it's even worse, you know. But he was, while shaving in the morning, he used to speak to himself Hochdeutsch, because he wanted to hear the sound of the language. So I think that I think we have to go back to the essence of what is the gesture of creating art. You know, what is the engagement which is involved in it? Again, not indoctrinary or demagogic, but pure, strong works. And I'm happy I didn't end in this crash of helicopters, that I have the pleasure to be talking to you in
I'm
Florence.
delighted.
You know.
We're all delighted. We have a couple of minutes left, maybe two minutes left. Amos, I wanted to know what your next big thing is, because you're a man of, as I said, a polymath. You could be doing 100 things. What's the next 100?
So yesterday I came from Venice. They're installing the house, the continuation of the house. The house will go elsewhere. In Pompidou, I will do something. You know, this year is 50 years to the Kippur War, and it's the only moment in my life that I did some drawing for 1 month, and then I stopped. And they will show some of them in the Pompidou.
Are your drawings good?
I don't know. But apparently they want to show them. So
fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I will look forward. I will be in Paris to look at them. And
you are all invited. It will be the 20th and the 21st of this month, of May, in the Pompidou, the beautiful gallery. And we'll also do, I call it the War Requiem, and we will do a piece by Britten, the
Benjamin Britten.
The War Requiem, Lacrimosa with Nathalie Dessay, and a choir will do. So it's a performance presentation. You're all invited, 20th, 21st of May at the Pompidou. So I think that talking of, you know, the moment I did the film on the war, it was 27 years after the incident. The film was shown in Cannes in the year 2000. The war was 73. And people ask me, why do you, now we speak about peace? So I said, let's not forget what is war. so we can make peace, you know. So I think that it's good, again, you have to be a bit, art has also a quality, music also of, since you are into music, of obsessive, repetitious variation on a theme. So I'll try to keep doing it, you know.
The great thing about having someone like Amos is that he wraps up the talk for you beautifully. Thank you very much, Amos. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.